So, what if luxury fashion brands stop using celebrities as brand ambassadors? That is what we're discussing today. We've seen year on year luxury brands are declining in their revenues. Kering just posted their result yesterday and they dropped 10% in revenue. LVMH also stagnated with a 1% drop in their revenue for 2025. And the question is, these brands have been putting in so much money into celebrity partnerships and endorsements and sponsorships, but then the results keep dropping. But we see that they generate a lot of buzz, a lot of excitement, but at the same time, it's not translating into the results. And so we're posing the question today, what if luxury brands stopped using celebrities and leaned more into business execs? Why not tap a market that reflects your customer base versus using celebrities that have diverse range of followers? And so to discuss this topic today, I have Boo Attwood and I have Alexander Shapiro joining us on this episode. So just to before we get into the topic, it will be good to get a quick intro. Boo, tell us what you do. Alex, also, we know you already, but then just tell, for those that haven't watched the previous episode, let us know what you do. Yeah, so Boo, over to you.
Hi, I'm Boo Attwood. I'm a personal stylist. I work with top executives, helping them to lead well and with confidence.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Alexander Shapiro. I'm a brand strategist and consultant with regard to international business development. I've worked both inside of big companies like Spotify and Deutsche Telekom and IBM, as well as worked as a consultant for leading international tech and consumer brands.
Super. All right, let's get right into it. I'm very excited to discuss this topic. And we're discussing something that isn't really in practice. I haven't seen any branders in recent times. And it's the concept of having brand ambassadors with business leaders versus the traditional route of using media celebrities, sports celebrities as brand ambassadors in fashion for consumer brands and all of that. But then I really want to know, like, why do you really think, and this question is for you, Alex, why do you really believe that at this point, luxury fashion brands in particular should stop relying on celebrity fame or celebrities and start leveraging more business executives or innovation leaders?
I think the first reason is that it's just not working. So we've seen a fall in revenues and unit sales amongst most luxury brands over the last 3 to 5 years, particularly brands like Gucci and LV, which have been very, very dependent on celebrities and sponsorships and collaborations with different types of celebrities, whether they're celebrities from culture, such as pop musicians or actors or actresses, or but they're also celebrities from the art world and from more sort of expert fashion areas. It just doesn't seem to be resonating with consumers in terms of convincing them to purchase the products. It generates a lot of traffic on social media and different forms of digital media, but it's not converting. So in essence, they're speaking to not their target audience. And we think their target audience, on the other hand, which is a much smaller group than the general social media population that follows a lot of these brands, is much more interested in investing, is much more interested in innovation and powerful business leaders. And that these luxury brands should now, especially in these hard times, focus much more on the preferences and desires and interests of their actual core customers instead of these kind of broad, general popularity contests. And I think this is something I've talked with Boo a lot about, that is luxury is about power, not popularity. And that celebrities give this sort of general response, but don't give that kind of exclusivity, scarcity, selectivity that have always been a key element of what luxury is.
That's an interesting one. But did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Very much to what Alexander was saying. Business leaders are the true customers of the luxury fashion brands. So whereby, as you've mentioned, Alexander, celebrities have been at the forefront of these campaigns for so many years now. We're looking in the wrong direction. It's about, as you said, as you so well put, business leaders have the competence, the discipline, the power, and they are where I feel the future is going for fashion brands.
Interesting. And to support that, I think there's sort of that fatigue and also just overexposure on social media. There's the concept of having true celebrities as we had, say, like 2 decades ago in the 90s, and, you know, where we were right in the middle of celebrity culture and where we couldn't get enough of these people and there was some mystique to them. I think we've lost all of that, and pop culture is slowly losing its authority. But then do you think as well that, you know, we're having, if you flip it on the other side, we're having business culture now replace that, where we have, you know, these CEOs and business leaders becoming really aspirational figures? What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, no, I think that business leaders, you know, obviously portrayed by cavalier characters like Elon Musk, brand collaborations and sponsorships, they're starting to sound the same. Their stories become the same. And I think when you look at the stories of executives, especially super successful, very, very intelligent, charming executives like Mary Berry, who's now the CEO of GM as a woman, right? I think if we look at Jane Fraser, who's the CEO of Citicorp, that we're starting to see really, really interesting men and women taking on challenging roles, and their ability to communicate as CEOs has grown tremendously. Their media training is incredible. So I would just rather sit in a room with, the new CEO of Vodafone, Margarita Della Valle, than to necessarily sit with some pop star or some K-pop singer, because they have so much better stories to tell. And we can have a much richer and deeper interaction that in the end of the day differentiates the brands from each other. And when all the brands keep using the same celebrities who keep telling the same stories, we don't get any separation or differentiation, which I think is incredibly important, that character and authenticity, especially for premium and luxury brands, that gives us a reason to buy them and a reason to come back for more.
Well said. Well
Yeah,
said.
something I was going to add to that is, very much the same feeling, is that celebrities, having used them for so many years, and very much like Alexander's so well put, is that they're very much almost like they're carbon copies of each other in the way that they're acting. So it just, there's this feeling of the whole feeling for me is that it's entirely disingenuous now. So it feels as though there isn't really any trust. And it's with the business leaders who can actually show us that trust and social proof just by their power and how they lead. And I think that's something that's, is coming to the fore again right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
like
can totally agree with that, with the whole thing about the ingenuity, because in selecting celebrities for a product or a brand, you kind of marry them. So, for example, Jonathan Anderson, who, was in Loewe and now has moved to Dior, and literally he just took his brand ambassadors from Loewe and moved them over to Dior. So it's like there is a Loewe woman. Her dress sense is quirky, she's fashionable, and there's a classic Dior woman. But then when you just take because you had a relationship with the celebrities, you take them from your previous appointments, move them to the new brand that has a different ethos, that has a different vibe and, house codes. It's really ingenuous, and people can see through this. So same thing with, A$AP Rocky that we saw with Bottega, and all of a sudden he literally just followed the designer and followed him over to Chanel. Bottega, Chanel, they have different house codes. They have different, still similar customers, but then, they represent slightly different things. So it's so disingenuous.
But also, Bottega's had problems with its revenues recently. So has Dior. So how well was he doing at Bottega? How much sales was he driving? Again, using celebrities, it's to generate additional revenues at higher prices, which means margins. And if this isn't working, you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for different results.
Yeah.
Mm.
And as we've already said, it's entirely lazy just to take from one house to another and to keep moving it. And how are they expecting things to improve when there is no real effort being put into, why are you going to want to part with hard-earned money for a certain item of, a product that is extremely expensive when you just feel like there isn't any real passion being poured into the product? And I think that's something that's really missing. It needs to come back, and it can come back, but it's going to take a bit of time.
Yeah, interesting. And Boo, you said earlier that, luxury fashion is about confidence and power. And I wanted to get your take on this as well. Like, who really embodies that more convincingly? A movie star or someone running a global business?
Absolutely, I would say someone running a global business. I feel that as a society, we have become very much obsessed with programs like Succession or House of Cards, on his Peaky Blinders, those sorts of shows that really portray family dominance, big boardroom decision making scenes, things where it's like risk taking. I think there's a lot of interest in that sort of angle now, whereas in the past it was much more, we're interested in which A-list celebrity is wearing whatever item of clothing. But now it's there's got to be a lot more content and a lot more, almost a feeling of depth that is now being required.
Yeah. Also, I think to support what Boo was saying, that the recent success of an HBO show called Billions and a BBC show called Industry, that people are really excited to learn about very well researched TV programming that integrate drama and business because they come together quite well. And I think also the business press has gotten very sophisticated and brought people in, as well as I mentioned earlier, that people are just investing more of their money. So there's lovely stories that can be told, interesting situations. And I think when you stand up in front of shareholders, or when you're in an important board meeting, or you're working in a business environment, how you dress, the way that you present yourself with the clothing that you wear is incredibly important. And I think this is much more so than just a model down a runway we've seen 1,001 times, or as we discussed earlier, some kind of an influencer in an irrelevant and artificially created fantasy environment. I think now people are really looking, as you had mentioned, Fola, about trust, and Boo, you talked about trust as well. And we trust through authenticity, we trust through engagement, and also that you've seen my life, you understand what I'm going through, and no, I don't, fly on balloons every day and, stumble down staircases into a pile of luxury champagne. So I think that's really important, that authenticity.
Yeah. I mean, I like that you both mentioned Succession, because Succession didn't lead with fashion. It wasn't a fashion show. It was a pure business family dynamics. But even without the logos, even without, people were so fascinated with the dressing of the rich and the famous and the powerful. And there's something that is attractive to people about that power, and just seeing how the 1%, or at this point, maybe the 0.5% live and what they're wearing, and that curiosity. And I think it generated so much buzz for, I think it was Laura Piana. I think the face cap that the character, one of the Roys, was wearing, I think that was something that got quite viral, and people just wanted to know, what are they wearing, even though it has no logo on it. So I do see that point in people attracted to power, and not just celebrity fame, but then real power, people controlling, billions, controlling the industry, and just wanting to know, being curious about their lives and what they're wearing. But yeah, there is that point. And then just speaking about that, and just taking a step further into, why do you think we're having this admiration shifting from entertainers to builders? What is changing? What do you think is changing culturally to make that happen?
I feel like modern aspiration is experiencing a nuanced shift increasingly. And it's almost as though it's prioritizing competence, integrity, and the real characteristics that relate to depth rather than visibility and the kind of shallow ego that you might have seen, as we've said, with old kind of celebrity campaigns and things like that. And obviously, I think now the evolution is reflecting a deeper desire for just to be more human, just to see people at a level that, we all can meet at, rather than having this hierarchy of almost kind of made up fantasy people that are wandering around in whatever they've been asked to wear, been told to wear, and they're being paid for it, and they're being given the product. We actually want this feeling of relating to the people who are the faces of these brands. And I think that's something that is just resonating more and more. I think the need to, authentic and genuine in the product that we're buying.
I think for me, it's much more about the fact that fashion brands and their communications are boring. And that what's going on in boardrooms, or what's happening in the business world, whether it's cryptocurrency or whether it's shift in social media, is really exciting. So, and I don't think this is just backed up by my personal opinions. I would also like to understand why a guy like Mr. Beast is the most popular person on YouTube. Right. And he gives away millions of dollars, interacts with people, communicates, creates real bonds. Or Lame, for example, who's now a shooting star on social media as well, with his practical advice and fun take on the world. He's simply an individual. These are not originally, especially Mr. Beast and Lame, don't have super high production quality, but they have great storytelling. And CEOs and executives, innovators, creators, people creating things that are changing our lives, whether it's medical technologies or medicines or products that make us healthier or skinnier, are so much more interesting than another smiling face next to an artificial luxury environment. I'm particularly disturbed, for example, by why luxury brands feel that they have to give us cafes, as if we needed more coffee in our lives, instead of actually talking to us, interacting with us, creating an experience together. And I think luxury brands used to do that more. They used to shock us more. They used to go, wow, what's that? And why are they doing that? They used to do things we didn't like that we would eventually learn to like. And now it just, I guess the word for me is, it feels generic, and celebrities have become generic. So it's time to move on.
Yeah. But then do you think, just also pointing that out when you talked about the fact that the shock factor is gone. But then don't you think it's just as a result of just too much social media and just too much
Yeah.
of a saturation of everything? So like nothing is new anymore, and like it's really hard to cut above the noise. I mean, don't you think that's the reason why we're just getting this whole brand fatigue, celebrity fatigue? Everybody's tired.
Yeah, everything's super fast paced, isn't it? You can't keep up with the next trend, the next anything. And I think there's more of a need. Definitely, I'm seeing there's a growing need for more in real life experiences again, much to what Alexander was saying. It's about going in and, experiencing the product and having an almost artisan, experience of how pieces might be put together, or a backstory to them, or actually just like having that tactile experience of feeling something, picking up a product. It's a sensory perception, so it's going to automatically align with your mood, and it's going to enhance how you feel and your emotions. So I think that's part of what the brands really need to bring back to the fore is that sort of journey for their customers, so that they can feel like it's not this one-dimensional kind of trick, that it kind of feels a bit like trickery when you see these celebrities. So yeah, it's bringing it back to emotion is what I would say.
Yeah, I think brands. Sorry, go ahead.
What?
Yeah, and I think brands have to show that they care about the daily challenges of their customers. So if you were to show an executive choosing their wardrobe before a very difficult shareholder meeting, or when they have to go maybe to their staff and fire people, or maybe they're introducing an amazing new product in Las Vegas, these are incredibly tension-filled, practical moments where somebody who wears luxury fashion in similar situations. And I think this goes back to what you were talking about with these business-related TV programming and business-related movies, was that people are really interested in it. It builds that tension. And then when you just have these, again, repeated, generic, obvious luxury moments of people on beaches or twirling in front of the Eiffel Tower, it just feels really, as Boo had mentioned earlier, lazy.
Yeah. And then, so just talk about some of the leaders. I know you mentioned a few, Alex, you mentioned Lisa and, Jensen. Are there other in particular, male and female, that you think had this presence and authority, that you want to spotlight?
Yeah, I've been chatting about this with Boo. We really like a woman named Wei Li, who's the chief investment officer over at the world-leading Blackstone Group, and she's constantly discussing different trends and market conditions, and she does it in a very human way. She's constantly on TV. She also has like a really nice Instagram feed where she has her family and her personal choices, and I think she comes across very human. She's born in China but educated in the U.S. and now has this incredible position, speaks obviously brilliant English as well as Mandarin. And yeah, she's just a real superhero for us. We talked a lot about Mira Murati, who was the chief technology officer at OpenAI. Very elegant, very composed woman. She's now started her own company, Thinking Machines. We like in Europe the various telecoms operators like Crystal Heidemann, who's over the CEO of Orange in France. And I mentioned Margarita, who's the CEO over at Vodafone. I think also what's really fascinating is the world's largest mining company in the U.S. called Newmont Mining now has a woman, Natasha Villon, as its CEO, which is incredible, I find, as well as Boo and I talked about the CEO of Daimler Truck, Karen Rodstrom. And so each of these women has different levels of inherent beauty based on social standards, levels of charm. Each of them has a very, very distinct character. So we think when you, as a brand, get a chance to find the CEO, male or female, who has the look, who you want to transform in a specific way, who carries that kind of energy that you want, it's just got to be amazing. We also think that the people who are their fans, and don't forget CEOs have followers and fans too, the percentage of those people that are in your target audience are multiples of just pushing out a video with Lisa from a K-pop band that will get you millions and millions and millions of clicks and engagements, but they're not turning into sales. So in the end of the day, it's a really cheap and easy way for a marketing manager to cover their incompetence.
And will anyone stands out for you apart from the ones Alex has mentioned?
But yeah, there was someone actually that Alexander and I, who we'd been discussing as well, and maybe more because she's got more of a slightly old school look to her, but it's Lisa Su of AMD. She's this amazing first-rate speaker. She's hugely charismatic, and she's super confident. but she definitely has a style that's a little more, in a way, classic. However, she wears it really well because she knows it has got a slightly kind of corporate feel, but the cuts are good on her and they work to her sort of reliability aspect. So I feel like she, even though isn't necessarily someone who is as modern or contemporary in her dress, just she's nailed it, and it does work. So I think that's something to think about when leaders that I work with come to me. Obviously works for them specifically. It doesn't have to fit a certain mold. So I also, yes, would say Jensen Huang with his black leather jacket that he's been wearing for 20 years. He just completely rocks it. It might not be your thing, but it doesn't matter because it does work.
Yeah.
It comes across as powerful, sleek. He's confident. And there's consistency there. He's been wearing the same thing for 20 years, as I said. So it encapsulates someone who is reliable and they know themselves. And I think that's the most important thing with leaders.
Great.
And their performances, like with Jensen Huang and Lisa Tzu, they're both from Taiwan. Their stock performances are through the roof. These are companies that have increased profitability and revenues, unlike any other company in history. And I think especially Lisa Tzu, AMD shares up over 100% over the last 12 months, facing the most formidable competitor, NVIDIA. And also their relationship, even though they're fierce competitors, is really charming. And I think, yeah, they just have a lot of character, a lot of competence, and that charm, which I think is underestimated by luxury brands. And again, it's just because I think their background, they're getting caught a bit in a bubble. But yeah, charm is charm, and it's a powerful weapon as well as competence.
I'm gonna flip the question this way. So we are not saying that we shouldn't use celebrities anymore. I think some celebrities still have merit, but I think it's how. So if you are going to give a test before signing a celebrity collaboration, what should a brand ask themselves?
I guess from my perspective, it's, does this celebrity differentiate me? So I think obviously the leaders in the luxury space like Brunello Cucinelli, Hermes, Ralph Lauren, they work with celebrities, both famous celebrities as well as they just work with less famous experts with much, much, much more success than LVMH and Kering brands, right? Their revenues are growing faster. I think it's because it's believable. It happens less. It engages me. It has this kind of handmade feeling, right? So for example, Hermes focuses on sketching and drawing. They work with equestrian riders for generations now, right? They show the products in the store. There's a consistency. Ralph Lauren's connection to New York, whether it's the Yankees or coffee, in their way, is so much more legitimate based on Ralph Lauren's history, having grown up in the Bronx, as well as the brand and its roots. I think they do things with the Olympics or with tennis where they sponsor ball boys, where they just do specific events. It has a clarity. It has this consistency. And again, I'm used to getting bombarded by images, so I slide. But when something comes from Hermes or Brunello Cucinelli or Ralph Lauren, it's always special. Even the recent launch with Usher, he's a big celebrity, but he's not a sort of an up-and-coming K-pop star. He's somebody who's been around for a while. He has a relationship with them. I think it's that issue of believability. And Boo had mentioned this earlier. You don't need to scream when you're in the luxury world. You can just be quiet, elegant. You drop something and it grabs more attention, but you can whisper. And I think this issue that Boo and I have also talked a lot about is confidence. Today, confidence is really hard. People try too hard, and luxury should be different, should be special.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah. Coming into that, I often feel that you can convey confidence so much through simplicity and minimalism. So it could be through the cloth or the cuts or through all of it. But it's about speaking volumes very quietly, which is very much what we've been discussing, Alexander and I. And I would say that, yeah, what I would rather say to brands as a simple test is, yeah, choose celebrities based on if they're genuinely believable and almost do a background check on them to see if they are the right fit for the brand. Do they even have good, it's important, do they have good morals and integrity? Someone who I feel resonates so well and has been around for, I think, 20 years with the brand is Nespresso with George Clooney. And the fact that has lasted so well, it's timeless. He's timeless. The collaboration is timeless. And I think in part that's because he comes across as this, and I think he genuinely is a really nice guy. He gives back as well.
The gentleman. He comes across as the classic
definitely.
gentleman. Yeah.
And he's always exquisitely dressed. He's He seems like there's depth to him. We don't know him personally, but the way in which he holds himself, the way in which he commands a room and the presence he has, the films he's worked in, everything he's built in his life for X amount of years, he's been famous. But for that particular collaboration is 20 years and it's timeless. And I think that's really something that has just worked so well. Come in, Alexander.
I would totally agree with that. And what I think is fascinating is that not only do they use Clooney, but they don't use as many other celebrities over the years. So it's memorable, it's clear. Mercedes-Benz uses Clooney too, and it's unbelievably forgettable, and it doesn't really work together. Clooney also is very open about the fact that he has a house in Italy, unlike Como. He's really, really big about that. He rides his motorcycle there a lot. And that whole espresso makes sense. But with Mercedes, it doesn't work with his character. No. And then they throw in other celebrities constantly. So I think that's the other thing is consistency and
loyalty.
Yeah. And I think we've seen that more like with Tiffany, with Anna Joy. There's more of a consistency there. They carefully pick the women actresses that they work with. I think that works. And even though they're in the same group, I don't think it's as consistent as we've seen with Dior or LV. I think we've seen with Coach sort of consistent use of interesting celebrities. And that's also part of why Coach has been doing so unbelievably well, is they're able to sort of take their New York connection, take the celebrities they use, and really create more consistency. So we don't think you have to get rid of, and that it makes sense to get rid of celebrities. It's just using less of them and then connecting them with people with charm. And again, to move away a little bit from just female superstar CEOs who we adore, you start to see people like Jamie Dimon over at JP Morgan, who's gotten involved a bit in politics, but in the right way, who's an extremely caring individual, who's received a tremendous amount of press. David Solomon at Goldman Sachs, who's also a DJ, and people make fun of him for the fact that he's also a DJ, but I think it makes him more human. And I think also Ted Pick over at Morgan Stanley, these companies are incredibly important. These guys are doing amazing things as well. They take a lot of heat on a regular basis, and they're able to come back. And even trends like weight loss. The CEO, David Ricks over at Eli Lilly, did amazing work, also coming back against Novo Nordisk from Denmark. These are incredible struggles back and forth. And of course, weight loss and issues around skincare. There are other executives as well that are super important to people. And I think people want to understand more. It's one of the reasons why how-to videos on YouTube are so important. People want to learn from entertainment as well. And it's that really nice balance.
But then if you were going to make this kind of a bit more practical and just looking at how this can work a bit, do you think this is something that many of these CEOs are subscribed to, kind of being a face of a brand? Or is it more of a subtle partnership where, these brands are offering to dress these execs for their big moments, or press release or things like that? What do we think it would look like?
Boo, do you want to go or should I start?
You start and then I'll think on it.
I think that the fashion brands should develop partnerships with a specific industrial company, and that partnership goes so that the entire board of directors can be dressed. There are pictures that are taken of them, just like in a fashion show. They do pictures on a regular basis. The board has board of directors meetings, so they sit all together answering questions. Each of them can be dressed differently. I think this would create a confidence, and I think it would also show a level of unity that's incredibly important. The individual CEOs could have their wardrobes defined by the brand, so when they come to public occasions, it would make sense. The issue about whether they should wear the clothes in their free time, I think, goes a little bit too far and feels a bit disingenuous. And then we end up in this situation where I have to supposedly believe that Leo DiCaprio wears Allbirds on his free time is, of course, silly. And this is, I think, one of the problems as well, even though when we talk about nicer clothing, that could be more possible. But I would see more for these big major events, and not just for the CEO, but also for the board, for top managers, and that creating fashion or clothing for management teams or even for companies makes sense. There are uniforms. So everybody jokes that the Patagonia vest has become like the de facto uniform of New York City investment bankers or London
finance bros.
Right. The finance bro move is sort of gone, and it shows that people are interested in what are these successful executives wearing. So, and this was done totally organically. Imagine if it were coordinated in a smart way, where this is what the software industry is wearing, this is what the finance industry is wearing, and really start to get that lovely conversation between real people who, again, when you're an executive, the way you look and how people perceive you is critical. So it's
Yeah.
believable and authentic. And we don't all want to look the same. And guess what? Executives don't.
Yeah, very much from my side when I'm working with clients and they are this top level executive, they are obviously wanting to exude a level of course, authority and power, but very much done in a quiet way, as we were saying earlier. So it's about having that kind of cohesive feel across their wardrobe and having a fluidity that is in alignment with who they are. So if they are feeling that they want to convey a softness about them, even though, so they want to perhaps be seen as assertive but feminine, then there's a level to which I can work with a client about how to get that message across through what they wear and how they style themselves. So the color palette, the cloth they wear, the fabric choice, whatever it might be, the cuts. But also something that is really important is that when you were saying, Alexander, about the boards and dressing an entire company, it's having that fluidity, as I said, across all of the staff. And that in itself displays a sense of trust and power and due diligence as to, as to what they're saying they're there to do. So I feel the way in which you dress is crucial as to how you come across, of course.
Great. Love that. Love that. And just in closing, I wanted to check with you. So we did the one for celebrities. If we're going to flip it as well, if you had to do a simple test to see what business leader, business executive should match what brand, what are the checks, or tests that you would do to say if this person's a good fit?
Well, I mean, I would look at what their vision is. So companies, what's great, unlike celebrities, create things like vision statements. Celebrities are constantly presenting the strategy, the style, the focus of their companies. And they talk about, are they an innovation-driven company? Are they a production-driven company? So their values are very, very clear. They give to very, very specific charities. So it's super easy to tell what they stand for. Celebrities are constantly trying to hide who they are, right? Because on one hand, they're representing a brand with an incredible tradition and beautiful quality, like a Tiffany's or a Bulgari or an IWC or any number of very, very high quality products. And at the same time, their personal choices and who they are can be very, very different. I think when you're dealing with executives, that a lot of the times their goals and the words they use and the kinds of relationships they build, the responsibility that they have for generating performance and quality, which is key also now for luxury, and especially for sports brands or sports-related luxury and premium brands, is going to be really, really easy. Plus, there's so many more top-level executives out there than there are top celebrities out there. So you can really develop that long-term relationship that Boo talked about, as we see between a Nestle and a George Clooney, within a specific executive, with the people that buy their products from that company, right? So you can really match the target audiences. And I think that's the issue which becomes difficult for me, is that celebrities speak to a specific target audience. Brands speak to a specific target audience. And when there isn't sort of an overlap, I get a little bit confused. And I think even for like stars like Lady Gaga, who are her core listeners? Right? They tend to be younger. There's a lot of Asian women. I don't necessarily, she has her political views back and forth. And I think things get really quite easily muddled. And just the raw number of fans that somebody has isn't quite enough. So Kylie Jenner with Kylie Cosmetics, huge success, tremendous respect for her work. But why suddenly Miu Miu feels the need to work with her also makes me question. Yes, it'll generate traffic. Yes, it'll generate hype and interest. But hype and interest isn't sales. It isn't relationships. It isn't cash flows. And that's, to me, just as we talked earlier, a sign of laziness.
Nailed it. Yeah. And just as a closer now, if we look down the line 5 years time, do you think we will get to a place where, luxury brands would literally actively shift away from celebrity obsession and move more, the same way we've kind of moved away from logomania now? Do you think this celebrity obsession will also just die away, or do you think it will still be something that would carry forward?
I hope it dies away. I feel
sorry.
No, I feel like we need something new. It hasn't been, we've had it. It's been fantastic. It's been a good run. I would say celebrities taking over all of the brands and being, at the forefront of the campaigns has been happening for so many years now. And I just feel it's had its day. I'm not saying there isn't a celebrity that can work, like we mentioned with George Clooney. There are a few, but I would say they tend to be the old school A-listers that are the ones that would resonate still, probably for many years still to come. I think my feeling anyway, and I know Alexander's on the same page, is that the younger celebrities just don't have that, as we've already said, that depth and that experience, that lived experience that some of the older celebrities, the old, like we said years ago, the A-listers that were, the ones that we just kind of remember. They, for me, would be the ones on occasion. But otherwise, I would say, that the fact that business executives are going to have a longer run, and it'll be a fresher start and something new. I think that it hasn't been working, and it's just time to shake things up and to change the way that fashion brands lead.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think what's really sad now is that with digital twins and celebrities being able to give their images to AI engines, that what we'll start seeing is brands can suddenly have a roster of, especially the big luxury brands, of 5 to 10 famous individuals who then get put into artificial situations, dancing and playing in fake luxury environments as often as they want. And this will just create more content that's less interesting. Or they can follow Hermes and develop their own special relationships and deeper experiences. I mean, if I hear the word culture again, I'm going to lose it, right? So I think people sort of like, and I appreciate Bad Bunny, but for me, his Super Bowl performance with all the various celebrities around him felt really generic.
Yeah.
The fact that he was trying to represent all Latins, as if Latin was like one group of people. It's like Europeans. I've always hated that word, so it's like sort of grouping together ethnicity and culture into this gigantic ball that's supposed to take, based on either skin color or social context, just feels really terrible and really boring. And I'm just hoping that people will go back to individuals, impressive individuals. I think we saw that in the early days with Gap. We saw it with Benetton when it was all about a movement, a feeling. And today, same thing I would say with Levi's. And you look at Levi's now, it's all about celebrities. So their Super Bowl ad featured all the celebrities they've worked with over time. And it's even it seems as if they're parodying themselves. Look at, we work with this celebrity, then this celebrity, and all we do is work with celebrities and also work with other brands. You just got to say, it's not working anymore, right? For most of the fashion brands that are out there, their stock prices are falling, their market shares are falling, the industry is stagnating. And to keep doing the same celebrity-driven, collab-driven work, it's just, to me, insanity. I don't understand why it's going to go. And again, for me, I used to love, especially luxury fashion brands, because they would surprise me. They would inspire me. They would sometimes confuse me. They led culture. They didn't follow culture. And more importantly, I just stopped saying celebrity, stop saying collab, stop saying culture, and just talk to your customers. And this is something that I know Boo does on a regular basis. She works with the customers. She understands their needs and how fashion can improve their lives, not reflect some kind of a vague notion of status.
And there's something that we talked about in our earlier discussion that was the aspiration of merit. So, shifting just aspiration from just looking at, fancy people, fancy dresses, or celebrities, or even, the whole concept of Nepo babies and all of that, to having brand ambassadors that, people see, and they can see their traction, they can see their growth, you can see their success story. And I think there's still pockets of celebrities that could fit into that, they still have the merit, they can show the grit in their work. And even in also business execs. But then I think it's how brands also go about it. And so if I give an example, Olivia Dean, I think she's kind of like the biggest star on the scene, and people really like her because she's a bit authentic, and she's just different, doesn't have kind of like the trappings of the more current pop stars. And I saw that Cartier signed her immediately. And when I saw that Cartier signed her, I took a pause. I was like, is this also a case of, they see her as an individual and her uniqueness, or is this just, she just won a Grammy, she's the best new artist, let's sign her up? I was like, which of the, what two minds are this? And I think how we look at merit and the aspiration of merit also needs to be different for these brands. And
with as far as with the aspiration of merit, I think that with celebrities, when you mentioned their failure about Olivia Dean, I think because she fits both of the brackets. She is obviously super talented, but she also is the trendy new person that's there on the, and of course brands are going to want to collaborate with people who are at the top of the pile. So I think that is something that over time, I think that will probably continue.
I think for me, the issue of taking the time and developing a long-term relationship, and more importantly, also some exclusivity. I don't understand how you can spend so much money with a celebrity and not have an exclusive relationship, especially within your category. I mean, I think we saw a little bit better relationship with like Roger Federer and On Running, because Roger Federer's an investor in On Running. So that sort of created that believability. But I think, again, for the new pop stars that are going to be signed up, it's like, no, you work with us and only with us in the fashion industry. So I think there's a lot of collusion going on between the talent agencies
Yes.
and the influencer factories and the brands and the owners of media, just sort of keeping this bubble world alive. But you're just not seeing the results. And, I also have this understanding that as a customer, if I recruit other customers, not just as a celebrity, but just also as a regular customer, this customer's recruiting customers that we buy cars because of the people in our neighborhood who drive them. When we go to work and we see people wearing something, it may make us wear it or may make us not wear it. I think that's also the issue too. If I don't like a star, there's tons of brands now that I don't want to buy anymore. I used to shop with LV. I don't shop there anymore because I don't like their ambassadors. Shop more at Hermes because I like their marketing approach. Of course, it makes a difference. But I think there's not really a look at some of the blowback. And I think also the desire for intelligence. And I think that's something that's happening now a lot with consumers is they're saying, I really, you've got to entertain me. This has to be intelligent. If not, I'm just going to swipe. And that swipe away is very often not necessarily recorded or tracked. It's not in the best interest of Google. It's not in the best interest of Meta to show when people leave. I can't really control which ads I get on my feed, no matter how much I say I don't want ads from that company anymore. So I think there's just not a lot of transparency. But when you work specifically with a business leader and you reduce your marketing expenditures. It's companies like Cucinelli and companies like Hermes and RL, they spend less than 10% of their total revenues on marketing, while the top LVMH and Kering brands are spending over 15%. So it's a matter of doing less, doing higher quality, generating that trust and authenticity. And it's just going to make everything better. And then, spend more money. So it gives you more money to spend on your products, right? Luxury is really, for me, also about what it is that you're making. This is not washing powder, right? It's not toothpaste. It's not all the same. It really does make a difference. And especially now when luxury brands are having problems to say, we're going to go back to our archives. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're just going to redo old fashion. I don't know how you feel about this, Boo, as well, where everybody's just going to older fashion. Feels to me like, that's the reason why I'm going to leave you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, coming back to what you were saying about Bruno Cucinelli and Loro Piana and Ralph Lauren and the brands that don't really use any celebrities, or not really, it's very minimal. I think the way in which it works so well for them is that it's that the product just speaks volumes. Maybe a part of it, for my feeling anyway, is that the product is so strong that they don't feel the need to have those shiny celebrities as the face of their brand. And that, if anything, that just exudes confidence in the product that they are providing, which I think then obviously translates to customers like, well, I want that more than that, because that looks like they don't know what they're doing. And they're suddenly bringing out X amount of new product that's, it's very fast moving and there is no real cohesiveness to what they're doing. Whereas the brands that have that kind of innate style that they know work, almost a heritage feel, they are the ones that I feel you can really trust. And that they don't deviate away from that. And they know their product, they know themselves. And that speaks so well to me and to my clients.
Yeah. No, I think also in my space, like you look at the difference between Nike and Adidas, and especially Nike that's having failure, always more products, always more collabs, always more celebrities, both sports and otherwise. And then you look at On Running, small number of celebs they work with, much more local events, much more, and they're growing at multiples. Again, it's smaller company. It's not a direct comparison. On Running's growth has been incredible. Each quarter, at least over 20%, and Nike's just fallen apart. I think the same thing is true for ASICS. ASICS isn't using that many. When they use celebrities, they're runners, right? Very, very few. And they're just growing. Products are great design. And it's not that Nike and Adidas don't have interesting products, but when they make too many of them and then they hide them from me behind a celebrity. They don't let me see the products. So again, it's a running shoe. It's a basketball shoe. I want it to fit. I want it to help me to perform. And again, it's just don't distract from your products.
Yeah.
Don't launch too many of them. Why would you not? One of the greatest marketing tools on this planet is a happy customer. And I think now, especially with digital technologies and social commerce and all these things, it's so easy to show your happy customers. That's your superpower, your happy customers. And it seems like even though Nike is loved and used by more athletes than anybody else and more regular people, they forgot their customers. They used to feature them more in their ads. And now it just seems it's just all about clicks. And that's a shame. And the one group of people that are getting, the companies that are getting more and more successful in generating higher and higher profits are Google and Meta and Walmart and Amazon, and tragically, Nike's going down, LVMH is going down, Kering. So in the end of the day, they're just financing tech companies, and that's a shame.
If we're going to wrap up the whole episode in one quote that you said, the one I love most is, don't distract away from your products.
Yeah.
Don't place a shiny celebrity that distracts from your product. That for me is a golden line.
I agree.
The best customer you can have, or the best publicity you can have, is a happy customer. I think that is such a powerful one. Yeah. And what you said earlier, Boo, luxury is about power, not popularity. And sometimes, we're seeing too much of everything. And sometimes we just need to go back to that true celebrity power or true influence power, whether it comes from a celebrity or a sport person or a business exec. But yeah, I think that has just been a very good one to take away. And then this question is for you, Boo. We've seen in recent times celebrities using fashion as a tool to get themselves from kind of like the B-list to the A-list. I would say in recent times, Zendaya and a popular stylist, Laura Roach. Purely, it was fashion first before our talent. Do you think it's also feasible for business execs also to, add more to their presence or even their performance and impact through fashion?
Absolutely. Business executives, through what they are wearing, increasingly feel and know that they are able to project in a way that is far more powerful and impactful with the right clothing, with the right wardrobe. So it's about feeling that a certain style, whether it be a tailored, more kind of minimalist look, or it could be like a use of color or texture, the ways in which clothing can help a client to be seen in a way, the way in which I will closely work with a client to build a specific look for them. They will tell me, what they're wanting to achieve, what their goals are, what their values are, what their personality is, so that then I can bring together to the fore the items of clothing that I feel will really help that translate well to their audience. And over time, we build this core capsule collection of pieces that not only they are timeless, but they are of amazing quality. The way that then you can add in over season to season a few kind of fashion pieces that then just elevate and lift and just to continue to grow that collection. And then over time, they have this personal brand, and it just becomes who they are as much as who they are on the inside. So I feel that clothing has that tool, and it can take you from here to here in an instant.
Right.
I think also one small point that I would add to that brilliant summation from Boo would be that it's not only the personal goals and the personal challenges and the confidence that individual executives or teams of executives want to portray, it's also change. So when a company wants to change, I think by dressing differently and showing a different creative direction is really, really a nice tool to do that. And not only signifying it to the shareholders and to the business community, but also to the other employees. So, for example, at Apple, we've gotten used to a certain corporate style that's evolved. There's certain types of pants that the executives wear, certain kinds of shirts that they wear. There's really definitely a look, and whether it's consciously organized, which I'd assume that it would be or would hope, or it's something that's telegraphed just from Tim Cook down to the other executives, obviously Apple's going to go through a big change, has some big issues with AI. Maybe it's time for them all to start dressing differently to show us that this is the new Apple. This is a new direction.
Yeah.
Companies like a Mercedes or a BMW that are having problems. Maybe it's time for their executives to start dressing differently. So I think, again, it's a tool you can have to communicate. Yeah. And why should the best stylists in the world be styling people for the Academy Awards or styling people for major luxury celebrity-driven photo shoots when they could also be styling major business leaders. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity. And again, with my business hat on, I think the return on the marketing investment and the cost of these types of programs will just be much, much more advantageous.
I think it's been such a good discussion, and I think it's a new concept we're putting out there. It'll be interesting to see how brands, marketing leaders are listening to this, take this up, and we just get a breath of fresh air in how we're having fashion brands, put forward their representation, and hopefully we see a bit more differentiation than what we've seen in the last few years. But this was a great discussion, Boy. I enjoyed speaking with you and Alex as well, as always. Yeah, and it's a wrap. Thank you very much for everyone for listening, and thank you, Boo and Alex, for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a lot of fun.
It has. Thank you so much.